So hello everyone and welcome to Art Salon. It is my pleasure to introduce Diane Arrieta, who is a sculptor by training. She got her bachelor's in fine arts at FAU in ceramics. And I'm not quite clear on what her trajectory has been, but I think she took some time off. She's the librarian at FAU's Jupiter campus, and she has become very well known in this area by a pseudonym, which is Birds Are Nice. And that's how I first met you. I saw your work at the Cultural Council, and then I saw it at the Mordes Collection, and then I saw it someplace else, and then I saw it someplace else. It's very interesting, thought-provoking, relevant, important work. And I think what Diane has done is to take her art background and really go into what is important to me, what do I want to use my art for, and she's become a very much an issue-oriented artist, and her work is all having to do with the environment in various very conceptual ways. And the pieces are very funny, but they're also very meaningful and thought-provoking and different. And she went back to school and got a master's degree in wildlife biology, which is very different for an artist, in Edinburgh, in Scotland, the University of Edinburgh. So she's got a lot to tell us, and I thank her very much for coming here tonight. Diane Arrieta, Birds Are Nice.
Hi, thanks for coming. She pretty much summed it up. I'm done. I was born in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, and then my parents moved to the next speck, which is Oil City, and I grew up there until I was about 21, and then I moved to Florida and never went back, so I consider myself a Floridian. And since high school, I started out as a potter, and that was pretty much my thing. I bounced around to like 5 different universities trying to get my bachelor's degree, and I was a phys ed major, I was an art major, graphic design. When I landed in Boca, John McCoy, I don't know if anyone, he's the best potter that I know, and this was my friend Chris Hellowen's signature glaze. I did everything in this color and really liked pottery, but I had a lot of other things to do other than art, so I moved to Miami, and it took me a couple more years to get my degree, and I came back to Boca and I switched to hand building. Earliest influence were very tribal, pit-fired, indigenous cultures. I am part Native American. I'm a Susquehanna Indian from Niagara Falls. They're part of the Iroquois tribe. Coincidentally, I didn't find this out till like 5 years ago. Like, who knew? Because when I was a little girl, we went to Niagara Falls, and they have a picture of me standing there holding the chief's hand, and I was like crying because I wanted them to leave me there, and I'm like, oh, they're like, well, you're so weird. Okay, we'll leave you there. And come to find out that if I had known this throughout my whole life, maybe something interesting could have developed from it. But Daisy Youngblood, to me, has a lot of indigenous symbolism in her work, and my early work did. Also, her work, I think, gets to the essence of the animal, or she did a lot of combining human animals, and she always leaves their eyes empty so their souls can pass through the work. And she's been my favorite artist for the longest time until she switched from clay and she started bronzing them, and all the life went out of them, and I didn't like her work anymore. But my own work, you'll see, is realistic, but not, it's more interesting to me if they're not real, because just to me, if you look at something that's very realistic, you can get all the information and then you walk away, you can appreciate it. But for myself, I don't learn anything. Interesting, odd shaped work just makes me happy, and I think that you can learn from stuff that you're not used to seeing. He was a big influence. Before I went back to school, all of my work was mixed media, and I was kind of painting and printmaking, and I like to use found objects because I don't like to put more objects into the environment. If someone already made it, then why should I recreate it if it's already made? Marisol Escobar, I don't know if anyone knows Nena Escobar. That's her aunt. She went to school with Giannina and I. But her work is just so weird. Like, there's so many things I can say about it, but it just influences me because it's flat, it's two-dimensional, but it's 3D, and it's just saying all kinds of weird things. None of my work looks like any of these people, but underneath you can see a similarity to it. And when I was painting, my work most resembled Jasper John's, and I had paintbrushes stuck on and text and all this more abstract than my work is now. And then this is my early clay work, very tribal, pit-fired animals. I did a lot of combining. This was a 10-foot log on the beach, and we were sitting there. I looked over, I'm like, oh my God, there's a giraffe. Leslie, bring this out. He's lugging this 200-pound log in his truck, and he's like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then from that 10 feet, I just saw the giraffe. And so a lot of my work was incorporating found objects around clay. And a lot of tribal, that's a Huarari Indian. I was, even back then, environmental issues with indigenous people and the rainforest. And this one is Walkabout. It was a symbiosis with the Aborigines when they go walkabout and the flies clean all the mucus out of their bodies in the heat. So even back then, before I knew I was doing environmental art, now I can kind of see a pattern from way back in the beginning till now. And then we're starting to take a turn into contemporary art. I don't know what happened. Just one day I'm like, okay, I'm bored. Let's see what weird stuff we can start making. So this was an installation of hens. And a lot of my early work was about people issues that I was having at a bad job, which I'm still at that same job. So I obviously worked through them. Ask her, she's my boss. It has nothing to do with her. But a lot of my earlier work was about interacting with people that I didn't fit in with. And on a side note, I am not a librarian. She's a librarian. I just play one at work. I'm a science and art outreach coordinator, not specifically a librarian. So people get mad when when I went to grad school, my first attempt at grad school was at FAU. I did my undergraduate at FAU. If you go to grad school, don't go to the same school that you went undergraduate because you need a different viewpoint. And Giannina made it out and I didn't. It was very constricting. I wanted to do mixed media. They wouldn't let me. It was very object oriented. But this person was our visiting professor, and I think she is the most influential person I can point to personally that changed my art. She was an installation artist. She does multiples, and she taught me how to go from objects to space. And she also does multiples and taught me how to make molds, which I utilize a lot in my work. And her work is very, it's changing. She was very industrial and mechanical and very emotionless in her work, but her new work that she's showing this year is really opposite fantasy animal type, which I don't have any images, but her work is very clean and precise. And I just like multiples because I think there's not one single idea that, most of my ideas are so complex, it's hard to just say what I'm trying to say in one single piece. And I like repetition, and I like the fact that it kind of industrializes it and makes it commercial, because in my view, the environment and animals are all a commodity, and when we get to the science part, I'll explain that a little more. And yes, I'm going to teach you some science, so sorry, not too much. But this is Jeannie Hewlett, me, but after I met Jeannie and my work started going into installation, these are dead birds. A lot of my early work, still I do blackbirds is my main symbolism. I feel as a Native American, blackbirds carry your soul through the other worlds. My friend Jonathan and I take pictures of dead birds and we text them to each other all the time because they're beautiful and sad, and there's just so many things that I find in bird imagery. A lot of people don't like dead animal sculptures, but I think they're beautiful. And then the dead bird theme kind of continues throughout, but it's starting to talk more about social issues. A lot of my work can either be social or environmental because I think they're all intertwined. This is about everyone living in confined space and psychological craziness that people go through, but it's also habitat loss, and birds, their environments are shrinking and shrinking, so there's nowhere to live and they're stacked up, and over here there's no birds but they're all dying. But on there it's like self-respect, and it's more human things that are lost with the way society is run today. And then still environmental, politically charged. This Anchor Baby, it talks about immigration because my husband and I went through immigration. He's from Nicaragua. We had to leave the country and come back in legally. They made him a full-time resident when we were in Nicaragua. The U.S. Embassy, when we got to Miami, they canceled it just because they wanted to. And then we had to go through like 5 more years of his things. I think the system is antiquated, and it depends on what country you're from, how unequal it is. So I like to do a lot of immigration issues. This one, Anchor Baby, if you're born here, even though your parents are illegal, you're a citizen, and then eventually you can petition to have them become citizens. And then this piece obviously is about abortion. It was shown in a fashion show in New York City. It was a feminist fashion show. And there was like 35 artists that did that show. I still have that piece. A lot of my work also, I don't keep, I recycle it. I'll keep it for maybe 5 years, and then 1, I don't have the space. 2, I don't like having just work sit around. So if I don't sell it or I don't give it away, I recycle it and just start again. So if I ever have to have a retrospective, I won't have any work because I don't have it anymore, which is fine. And then after grad school, I sold all my clay stuff, moved to Texas. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because I could never get my clay studio back. But then when I came back, I went through this whole period of rebellion because Texas was just horrid. They're like living in the Stone Age. It's very conservative. My sister lived there. She talked me into it. But I wouldn't recommend it. Sorry if anyone's from Texas. Should have asked that first. So I came back and did all digital work, and I really like computer work, and I did that for like 5 years, and most of the work was social political. This work was about childhood obesity, and it was printed on actual cheeseburger wrappers. I did a lot of sex offenders. This piece was an installation that they were printed large, and you stood in the middle, and wherever it's shown, there was the number of sex offenders living within 5 miles of where you were standing, and it told about, this guy's an actual sex offender. They were all, I got them off the sheriff website and recreated them. And this work, like I get a lot of criticism with this piece specifically because my work is based on Marvel Comics and the comic genre. When you look at it, it's fun, it's inviting, and it's bright, and then you get up close and you're like, ew, oh my God, like, what am I looking at? And people kind of freak out. And how is this art? Is this supposed to be funny? No, it's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to teach you something. And if you get that upset, then I think maybe it's doing what I intended it to do, whether you like it or not. I always say my work is based on the Hegelian principle of dialectic reasoning, which in layman's terms just means that if you're not confronted with something different or that you don't understand, you can't synthesize new ideas and grow as a person, because if you're always stuck in your own little idea, then you can't move forward. So specifically my digital work was to not necessarily teach people anything, but to get them to look at issues that were uncomfortable, maybe have a different view, because it's easy to judge when you don't have these issues in your life, and a lot of us are pretty in a bubble, and we don't experience these things. This one was just an ode to my grandma, my Indian grandmother. And then, bullied as a child and just really self-conscious growing up, and people don't understand it. And I still am very self-conscious, and I struggle with that a lot. People don't understand kids. Kids are different, they think different, and you can't change them the way they think. So I did a whole series of these about childhood issues, and I had a woman see this, and she thanked me because she was having problems with her daughter. And then after she read some of these, she was like, they started having a conversation. So it was kind of neat to see how you can influence someone just from one of your drawings. And these were, I always say Diane Arrieta's art is social, political, and Birds Are Nice is friendly, environmental, because still Diane Arrieta phase. I like a lot of postcards, and these were giveaways at a show. There's a series of 6 of them, and I love those old-time jumble puzzles, and you have to figure out divorced parents, and then she became a drug abuser. It was just, that's my sister, and none of it's true, but she didn't appreciate that. My other sister's a porn star or something in one of them. So they always show up in artwork and they don't know it, and then they're like, oh, nobody knows who I am. But I like to give a lot of art away, just it's fun for me. Oh, I made stickers. If anybody wants stickers after, I'll give you some Birds Are Nice stickers. But I think it's amusing that I use family members in artwork without their knowledge. They don't find it funny. Like after 9/11, nobody would show the artwork. It's very political, and I just saw the climate of the art world changing to me, and everything got really sterile, and all the art was just like academic and intellectual but not emotional, and it was just making me mad. And then I had an experience that I had work in a show, and a person came up to me and said, "This collector loves your work, she wants to meet you, please come and meet her." Oh, great, maybe I'll sell something or at least meet somebody, you know. She looked at me and said, "You're not Latin," and turned around and walked away. And I was like, what? I married a Latin person, I speak Spanish, I am too Latin. And she's discounted my work. So I'm just like, first I'm a woman, second I'm not Latin, I'm just some girl from Pittsburgh, big deal, nobody cares about that. So that's when Birds Are Nice, I'm like, okay, let's be anonymous. So I came up with this logo, Birds Are Nice, just because birds are nice. I have parrots, and I've always liked birds, and I kind of like branding, and like you'll see later when I get to the graffiti influences. Advertising, to me, most advertisers are genius. Research shows that if you don't get someone's attention in 30 seconds, you won't. And if it's longer than 30 seconds, they'll be bored. So I was trying to develop kind of a brand through color schemes and just my logo, and just making a standard that people would know, okay, that's your work, because my work is so different. And if you see it individually, if you see it all together, you can kind of see that it's all me. But this was early Birds Are Nice. I was just messing around, because without clay, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm doing. I got bored with the computer, because from being a sculptor and on the computer all day, it drives you wacky. So I was just experimenting. I use a lot of skulls, again, dead birds, and vultures are one of my favorite animals. And then I was just, I like birds and birdhouses. I was just going through this phase of experimenting with different, it's talking about housing again. And then I can start seeing more contemporary influences and more graphic, bright colors, mixed media still. And on the surface, that's just cute artwork. And at the beginning, it was just to get away from all that drama with the sex offenders and everything. I just started making cute work, but it didn't last very long, because, I don't do cute. So then it started turning more birds. This was about the housing crisis, and you went in there and you saw the original Heckle and Jekyll movie. They couldn't find any place to live. So it was combining the past with the new, and it's still the same issue. Birds don't have, their habitat is going away, but I try to approach them in iconic and easy subjects instead of gloom and doom all the time, because people are surrounded with gloom all day. I want a fun way to approach a topic so people don't run away from it. So birds are nice going on, and I'm sitting in the library doing library stuff. So this whole time I have a parallel career. I've been a zookeeper, I've worked for vets, as a sea lion trainer, I worked with monkeys. So I've been sitting there this whole time. So I found a program that I really liked. So I said, okay, I'm going to finally do it. I don't care how long it takes. So this is what I studied: wildlife disease, habitat, captive breeding, human and animal diseases, the economics of the environment, which is infuriating. We'll get to that in a second. Biodiversity and science communication. It was 3 years of the most interesting time of my life, learning all these science things that, sea lions. I was a sea lion trainer in Miami for a year, and I miss it every day still, but ethically I can't have those jobs because I don't agree with captive animals unless you're breeding them to put them back. But sea lions, some of the sea lions were my best friend. I was a bongo antelope keeper, and these people captive breed and they repatriate them to Kenya. If anyone wants to look up a good organization, Rare Species Conservatory out in Loxahatchee, they're the best people I know. Dr. Aiello and Karen. He's the first scientist that taught me about biodiversity. He's like, if you never read anything, read this book. And he gave me a book about biodiversity. And then I ended up, my whole degree is based on biodiversity. And I've also been doing for 10 years marine mammal rescue and rehab. So all this has been parallel to the art and the other career. So now, most recently, I've been a dolphin biologist for the last 2 years. And we've been studying dolphin populations right off the coast of Palm Beach, and there's 250 resident dolphins that live in Palm Beach, and every year there's more coming through. Up until a month ago I was that, and now Leah helped me also. Now for this summer I'm going to study red mangroves and ants, because ants are really important, and one of the professors at the Honors College is the ant specialist, so we're helping him all summer, and then hopefully we're getting a permit to do manatees, so we're going to hopefully do a long-term manatee study. But biodiversity is a big topic, and there's just a couple things. I'm not going to bore you with a big science lecture, but everyone thinks that biodiversity is the variance and the variability and abundance of living things on Earth. But it's also the complex interactions between all these things that people don't understand. Ecosystem integrity is the ability of a system to maintain the balance. And what's happening now is, because of all the things we're doing to the planet, it's not able. Everyone has this, there's a whole field of science called conservation psychology. And it's really interesting because people form these ideas when they're little, and they usually carry through when they're adults. And most people have zero knowledge of wild animals, just what they see on TV, and it's all, wild is exotic, but wild is outside in this yard. Biodiversity is everywhere, but people don't realize the interaction. Like something that happens in Africa affects us, but we don't know that because the news doesn't tell us this. It just, all of these things are interconnected, and that's what I'm trying to get through with my art. I haven't quite figured out how, because it's such a huge topic. It's hard to get everything in a piece of artwork, but everyone understands, like, you get timber and water, but not necessarily everyone understands about runoff and how this farm affects a village 10 miles downstream, or these weather patterns are climate related, but the news only says these drastic weather patterns. And after, Mary Jo's going to give you some literature about a climate event locally that everyone should be aware of. The economics of the environment is a really hard topic and needs to be solved, because you can't put a price on clean air, but you can pay people to not cut down the trees, or you can pay people to not build an oil field. And there's all kinds of economic schemes like RED and all these other things that all the other countries are trying to do to make these services valuable, but the United States does not really. Carbon buying and all of that, we don't really participate in any of this. So I guess what I'm trying, the most important thing that people need to know about the environment is there's different levels of interaction. And if you take out one species, it still looks like it's functioning. But you take out one at this level and you take out one at this level, and after a while, they all collapse at once. Like it'll keep going, and it's building and building, and when it reaches its tolerance, the whole thing collapses. And it just like climate change, there's been a 30, 40-year lag of us seeing any results, and now we're seeing them, and now it's almost too late. The same thing with an ecosystem. If you remove a top predator, you're not going to notice a change right away, but 10, 20 years later, the whole system is collapsing because from the microbes on up, just because that one predator is gone, the ecosystems are very unhealthy. So I guess that's probably enough of the science part. We'll get back to the art. Just one more thing. Disease is one of the biggest problems facing public health today, and 5 out of 10 leading causes of death for people in the United States can be contributed to environmental, but you don't hear about that on the news because they don't want you to know that. You know, and a lot of animals like sharks and snails are used for neurobiology and cancer studies, and if you get rid of those animals, you get rid of any models that scientists can use. I don't agree with animal testing, but now that I've learned about more of that, it's necessary, or who are they gonna, there's properties of sharks that you can get without killing them that can help save human lives. So it's really important. So now, when I was in school and in between doing all my assignments, I'm sitting at the library looking at art, bored out of my mind. Art, everything was so boring. You've seen it all before. Like when I go to art shows, I've seen stuff that I've done 10 years ago, and those people, I'm like, there's so much work I make and nobody ever sees it. And then I'll see it like at Art Basel 10 years later, and I'm just like, so disgusting and boring. So then I started looking at street art, and I think they're brilliant. And I don't know how you guys feel about contemporary street art, but this is the kind of stuff I've been looking at. And I don't know if their intentions, these are never crew, they're from the Netherlands, I think. I'm interpreting this as environmental, of course, because that's what's in my brain most of the time. But they just go around and they make whatever they make. There's no rules. They make up their own rules. And street art now is one of the top genres, and it's in museums and everything. And now it's kind of going over the edge where everybody's doing it, and now there's like a street art mafia. You couldn't paint a wall in West Palm Beach if you tried, except for in Boynton Beach. So that's why I always go to Boynton Beach, because he's the only one that'll let me paint a wall. So I don't have a lot of practice. I would paint all the walls if somebody would let me, but Rolando in Boynton Beach is the only one that lets me do it. This guy, Roa, is my favorite artist. He's from Belgium, nicest guy. And also, street artists are so nice. They don't have any of the rules that the regular, like there's no ego, there's no anything. I wrote about this guy in my thesis. He emails me all the time. He's so nice. But I'm interpreting this as endangered species. I don't really know what his intentions are either. I never asked him, but again, with the dead birds, I have a thing for And then, of course, Banksy. I think he's a genius, because he'll just, who can think of this? Damn, I wish I had thought of that. But that gets a point across. It's very literal, but you can see it. Like, I can stand here and tell you all the things about global warming until the cows come home, but when you see that, you're like, oh, like you totally get it. I just think he's pretty cool. He talks about all kinds of environmental and social issues. And maybe I should probably live in Europe so you can do things. Well, he's allowed to do it here too. This is in LA, but supposedly there was a Banksy in Tequesta, and they painted over it immediately. I was so mad. I didn't even get to see it before they painted over it. It was in that pink plaza on US 1, right in Jupiter, but I didn't even get to see it before they ruined it. Etem Crew, these are two guys. And their work has I think they might be Czechoslovakian, I forget, but they have a lot of folklore in their work, but it's also environmental to me. And I'm also half Czechoslovakian, so for some reason I always, art that I find that I like and I look it up, a lot of it's from Czechoslovakia, which is pretty interesting to me. Same guys. Well, to me, that's more beautiful than anything I saw in Art Basel 1,000 times over. And it's emotional, and there's so many things it could be about. And that's the kind of work I like. It's reflective of to what you're seeing in it. I don't like work that tells you all the details. I like you to figure out your own story, because you'll learn something or you'll reflect on your own past or something and get more out of it than if someone gives you all the answers. This guy, early Dave Kinsey, and I tend to like early works of everybody, and then they go off the deep end, and I don't know, it's probably going to happen to all of us. Just, I guess you get bored, or I don't know what happens to artists, but I really like it was real comic style and just odd numbers. I have a lot of random numbers and things in my work too, and I guess I tend to gravitate to similar artwork. His work now is really just red and black and really ornate, flowery kind of things. I don't really like it, but I love his old work. This guy kind of reminds me of Woody's work over there in the gallery. Freaky, weird, with no arms, and just like, what the heck is that about? I have no idea. But I can make up some really interesting stories about what it's about. And if I still did clay, it would be all crusty and like that. But my problem with clay is it doesn't allow me to do as big as I want. So I always get frustrated with it, because for some reason my work wants to be big. I don't know why. But I like the little antique carts and things, just so interesting. And this girl, I didn't read any of these artist statements either, but I mean, if I asked every one of you here, you'd make up a different story about what you thought, and nobody would be wrong. Of course, she had her own idea what it's about, but the fun thing about contemporary art is you can make up whatever you want about it, or whatever you feel comes through. And I like the fact that she uses a lot of mixed media. Some are life-size and some are half-size, but they're all really, and her color palettes are bright. And I look at Pinterest a lot. You find all kinds of weird, I like a lot of craft items. I sew a lot in my work too. If anyone's on Pinterest, we should follow each other. I have a board of inspiration on there so you can see more of what weird art I find interesting. But I like the idea of crafts and the childhood innocence, because children don't have any preconceptions, and they can look at an art piece and make up a good story, or just even with the environment. When you're 10 is when you start empathizing about the environment. So we need to teach 10-year-olds how to save the planet, and then they'll teach their parents. Because whatever your experience is when you're young, you carry it through. And I believe that with art too. If you grow up and don't have any art, who's gonna teach you how to look at art when you're an adult? And there's so many people I know that never look at art or never go to an art show or anything, and it's sad, because those people are gonna be running the world, and you need creativity even in science, even in business. Like, I read an article that MFAs are the new MBAs, because the MBAs are so rigid that they try to get artists that can switch that line of business and creativity, and they can, like Steve Jobs, he was a creative genius. Depends, some people hate him, but I like him. All kinds of media, experimenting with paper. And I like the fact that it's unfinished. I don't like perfect art. I like messy, industrial, crafty. It's just more interesting to me. That's a cute walrus. And then my new work, this piece, this is a digital version. This was just at the Cultural Council. And this is still kind of social, but it's environmental too. It's talking about hybrid animals and then the drug trade. But the drug trade really has a huge effect on the environment, and nobody ever thinks about that part. That burning and slashing and putting toxins into the air when they're making their drugs, and then these poor girls are swallowing their drugs and dying, and then hybridization of animals because of lack of, you keep pushing animals together, they're going to interbreed, and then their fitness levels go down, and there's just a whole mess of things that can be said about all of my work. It's not just one thing. There's like usually 20 things going on. So this was the mural I did in Boynton Beach. It's about endangered species. That's the digital version. That's the real version. That wall was really bumpy, so it was hard to paint on. And the QR code sent you to the website if you were so inclined to learn more about the science and the biodiversity and stuff. And then this was my last one. It's there now in Boynton Beach. It's a little dude I know, saving the whales. And my new thing I decided is I'm going to pick a cause for every artwork and then send people to their website to learn about what's going on with what they do. And usually they have a good overview of the whole problem with whales. And there's so many with whales, I wouldn't even know where to begin to tell you now. This little piggy, this is talking about feral species in Hawaii. Most of the bird populations are being decimated from feral hogs. They brought in feral hogs because they wanted hunters to have something to hunt. So that was a dumb idea because they got out of control, and now all the low ground bird species are going extinct, and they can't control the hog populations. And feral hogs have about 32 diseases that can be passed on to humans. So it's a big thing. Not only hogs, they have lizards and toads and cats in Hawaii. The island is pretty messed up, which I would love to live in Hawaii, but I can't go because they quarantine your animals for like 2 months. My dog would not be happy. So I'm what am I supposed to make again without the clay? Like, what am I doing? And digital, bleh, I'm over that. So now my thing is vinyl, and I think I finally found something. Like this piece, the flowers are vinyl, the rest is stencil. And I was doing stencils for a while, but it was okay. I still do stencils, but cut vinyl is really enjoyable to me, and it can, like stencils, I'm still kind of shaky because it's a new skill. I'm not that good at it, but vinyl, I can make it perfect. It's like doing it on the computer, but it's off the computer, so I like really comic book graphic style. Hand cut, I was hand cutting them all for a while, and then for graduation I got a machine, so now I do both, but if they're intricate, the machine does it. And then this is at FAU right now and at Rolando's gallery in Lake Worth. So the beauty of this, I can do it inside and it doesn't mess up the walls. So I find I have a lot more opportunity to put my work if it comes off without me having to paint. And I don't really like to paint, it smells. So this, all the work, most of my work, all the planning takes months and months and months in my head, and then the execution, I can get it done really quickly, and I like that because my attention span is like a 2-year-old. I can spend 1, 2, 3 days, and then I start, let's start this. So this is pretty quick once all the planning stages are done, and I can put it up in an hour, and we're done, and we're on to the next one. So I really like that. So, and then I'm incorporating painting 3D and vinyl. The black is vinyl and everything else is painted in that frog. So I think this is the direction I'm going now, combining all three, painting 3D, starting to go back towards my sculptural roots, but I'm still iffy on what medium I'm going to use. I'm doing plaster and paper right now. And these prisoners out in Oregon are having the most success. These Oregon spotted frogs are endangered and monarch butterflies are endangered. And they found that Fish and Wildlife was having problems breeding these frogs to put back, but some professor got the bright idea. We have all these prisoners sitting there all day with nothing to do. Why can't we teach them how to propagate these species? And they've been really successful in the populations are starting to rebound. And a lot of the prisoners end up with master's degrees and PhDs in biomedical science from these projects. So it's a social and environmental experiment that's turning out quite nicely. So I think they should start developing that in every area where there's a need, and rehabilitate and save the planet at the same time. And then I have a solo show coming up, and this is just a sneak peek of some of the pieces in there. And they're all environmental, but you don't really know it at first, because Batman, it's, you know, bats are endangered. He's misunderstood. Bats are misunderstood. Everybody's afraid of bats. Batman's good and evil. So I'm using cultural references to get people drawn in, and then they can learn about the science if they choose to. If not, they just have a cool Batman piece to look at. This is about Hawaii and the endangered Hawaiian crow. That's just one piece of the bigger piece. So we'll see. It's a huge gallery, and I only have like a few pieces done, and it's September, so I gotta get busy, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I've got 3 out of 20 pieces done, so gotta get busy. Working for a living is killing my art career because I don't have time. So if anybody wants to connect on any of those, that's me, a stencil of me. When I first developed Birds Are Nice, because birds on my brain, that's all I ever think about. I think that's about it.